I just felt like a loser that it didn't work for me. Remember when Marie Kondo's book, The Life-Changing Magic of Tidying Up, was super popular and we all had to try it, and some of our friends had fantastic success, and I don't know about you, but I just felt like a loser that it didn't work for me. So today I'm going to let you in on the 5 reasons I feel like I failed at Marie Kondo's techniques, and I'm also going to share with you her 4 most underrated methods when it comes to decluttering. I know her book has changed so many lives, and that is fantastic for a particular style of decluttering and organization, but it's not a one-size-fits-all solution. Number 1 on the list is you only keep things that spark joy. I don't know about you, but I remember having fun having purchased most of my belongings. If these items didn't spark joy, why would we have bought them? Sure, we had a hope that it might have worked out for us, and it didn't quite, or it only served us for a short period of time. But for instance would be if I found this really great top at a thrift shop with a friend and we were having a fantastic day, and I tried it on and I thought it looked pretty okay, only to get home and notice, oh, there's actually a huge stain or rip in it. And some people, if you're willing to mend those rips or figure out how to get out that stain, that's fantastic. I used to think I could be that person, and evidence has shown me I'm just not. So it might be something as simple as that, where we just have to let go of, I'm holding on to this thing because it sparks joy, but it's not the item that sparks joy. It was really the experience and maybe the fun of the hunt, or just having a great day out with our friend. Similarly, we may have received something that was from someone special to us, and perhaps that person is no longer in our life in some capacity, and so remembering that person sparks joy, but the item they gifted us just doesn't serve us anymore. For instance, I received a bedroom set from my great-grandmother when I think I was in about middle school age when she passed, and so this was the set that was given to me after she had passed, and it was fantastic. I never had anything like it. Everything matched. I just loved this whole bedroom set, and I ended up keeping it longer than it was holding up. And so I know what you're thinking. Well, it was from your great-grandmother. Wasn't it an heirloom? It was from a box store like Levin, Value City, one of those types of stores. Over the years, some pieces had gotten water damaged or whatever. And the other thing is, I got to a point where I didn't really enjoy folding clothes, and so then the dressers became more junk collectors than they were actually serving the purpose of holding clothes, or, even if I could keep it, nice and organized, I just wasn't doing that. So it wasn't serving the right purpose for me, and I was ready to let them go. But it took me a really long time to get there, because in my mind, I was keeping them in the spirit of my great-grandmother and the joy of remembering her, and not so much that I loved this bedroom set any longer. The second reason I felt personally like Marie Kondo's method simply didn't work was one of her techniques is you take something from an entire category, and I believe the first one is clothing. So you pull out every single piece of clothing and put it in a big pile, and the idea is to kind of face how much excess you have. And I understand that in the sense of maybe some people do need to see that. But for me, I already knew I had too much stuff. And honestly, I didn't necessarily have the energy to pull out every single item of clothing and go through it one by one by one. And then you have this mountain that gets in the way for hours at a time. So then now I'm spending time and energy that I didn't necessarily have. And that's just another method of hers that I felt like didn't work for me personally. The third reason is sort of related to number 2, and that is that as you pull out everything and you're touching all of your things and belongings, sometimes it can actually kind of bring up more of a feeling of attachment to those items. Psychology studies have actually shown that, for instance, is if you're in a store and you see an item on the rack and you're kind of like, I don't know, and you keep passing by without touching it, and another shopper comes along and they end up grabbing it off the rack, and that, say it was the last one. You're less likely to feel that sense of like, hey, that was mine, or, you know, that territorial instinct. Whereas if you had picked it up, maybe you tried it on, and then you put it back because you weren't sure, when that second shopper comes along, they've shown that then you get a little like almost insulted, like, hey, that was mine. And then you're almost like, okay, are they going to put it back because I need to have that now? And so I think for some people that touching every single thing can actually make decluttering a little bit harder because it's bringing up some of that old attachment. And so for those of us who are single and living alone, it's something that we just kind of honestly have to deal with, unless you have a friend that can come over, and, you know, that's also a great way we can do that. But for those of you who have others in the household, it really does help to get them involved. And when someone else holds something up, and I remember this from moving out of my apartment, was going through yarn, and yes, at some point I had more yarn than I have now. Shocking, but true. And I remember a friend went with me to the apartment to go through and sort through the yarn after I'd, you know, gotten everything else moved into the house. And when she held up yarn, either I knew instantly that I wanted to keep it, or I was kind of like, eh. And when I had that feeling, it was so much easier to go, you know what, go ahead and put that in the giveaway pile and let go of it. The next reason I felt like her way of decluttering and tidying up didn't necessarily work for me. If you ever watch her Netflix show, it is showing this whole big one-time effort. And obviously, like, some of us need that good baseline to start with, but that's not always practical. And again, if you have energy or time limitations, that can be difficult. So let's just say you do, you know, kind of set aside a weekend or a week or however long you're going to do this big decluttering and tidying event. Then you don't see the after, you don't see the maintenance, you don't get shown how these people are keeping up on it and if it's practical or not. And while her organization is absolutely beautiful, it's not necessarily something that I can maintain very well. And in addition, when we're like focused on this one-time event, we're not thinking about the long term. And so I know so many people are into Atomic Habits by James Clear, and he even says you need to put in the reps and the practice and just focusing on doing 1% better every day. And when you build that habit, it's like working out or something. Like, yes, the first couple of workouts totally suck, but then it gets just a little bit easier to keep with that momentum, and I feel like it's the same thing for decluttering and tidying our homes. For that reason, I felt like a total loser when I tried her techniques and then I couldn't keep up on them. Last but not least on my list, this is going to sound incredibly petty, and this goes back to her organization her techniques are impeccable and they're beautiful. And for some people, they are super practical. But where I failed miserably is specifically with clothing, in that I hate folding clothes. I hate it. I hate it. I hate it. Like, her way of doing it seems tedious. It's beautiful. And if you don't mind folding clothes, go for it. Like, she's got YouTube videos on how to fold just about anything and put it in a dresser, and to be able to, you know, see everything that you have relatively easily. If I can hang it or put it in a bin, that's what I'm going to do, honestly. So I know I sound so petty when I think about it, but I can't get on board with the folding. It looked beautiful like the one time I did it, but I can't keep up on it. Moving on to the methods and techniques that I actually really enjoy is the first one is where you thank your house and give it reverence for keeping us safe, keeping us dry. It's the idea of like just paying a little bit of gratitude towards our homes. And I feel like that's just something we don't do very often, whether you live in a house or an apartment. It's just a thing we take for granted here in Western civilization. And I've been in areas of the world where that's not always the case. So I do think that Marie Kondo was onto something awesome when it comes to remembering to kind of say our blessings and thanks for our home. And in the tone of gratitude, the other thing I really enjoyed of some of her methods are when you decide you are ready to part with an item, is taking a moment to say, hey, thanks for serving this purpose. Even if it was something that turned out really crappy and miserable, you go, you know what? Thank you for teaching me. This is why we don't buy junk. And maybe it's, hey, this shirt looked fantastic on me at one point, but now there's holes in it, or a huge spaghetti stain, or maybe it doesn't fit anymore. And so our first inclination is we want to feel crappy about it, but we can still thank it for the time that it served us in that season of life. The next thing I will say I'm not very good at, and I want to try to remember to do this a little bit more going forward, is the simple act of, she calls it waking up your items. So it's like taking something, gonna use this mouse because it was right here, but you wake it up and tap it, like waking up the spirit of what this is. And I think it's less about waking the item up, and it's more about focusing our attention and our intentions of what we want to accomplish with our belongings. And you know, it's something I've gotten out of the practice of doing, but it's something I really want to reincorporate into my decluttering. And last, but certainly not least, of her techniques that I really love and I still do to this day, even though it's been many years since I've actually read her book or watched any of the episodes, is the practice of trying to change the energy in your room and breathing a little bit of new life into it so that you can kind of get that breath of like, I'm getting ready to make this awesome change, whether it's just opening the windows. I think in a few episodes she had a tuning fork, which I don't think are incredibly expensive on Amazon, but they're also certainly not necessary. Maybe you can put on the fan. I've also heard of like clapping in the corners just to like wake up, you know, those spaces and kind of get those vibrations going. And just, again, it's about changing the energy of the room. And I think it's also, again, more of, hey, we're focusing on this thing and this big change. And generally when we have so much clutter, we've gotten into this like, energy, and we feel gross and slimed and crappy about ourselves. And I think that's a great way to just kind of re-energize and reinvigorate our space so that it can transform into an area that we truly love. If you also feel like you failed at Marie Kondo's techniques of decluttering and tidying up, go ahead and join me right here. And thank you so much for stopping by. And as always, I cannot wait to visit with you in the next one. Bye.